Hello YouTube, I am reviewing another beginner program today and it's raining outside again. I am fully thinking now that I'm cursed and that the day I review strong lifts, I will actually die in a tornado. So, I was actually thinking of reviewing Brian Alsru's Dark Horse program. I found out, very sadly, that he apparently doesn't really like when people make spreadsheets of his programs because he wants people to watch his videos. I have nothing against that. That being said, I'm not going to sit through 30 minutes with a pen in my hand for something that should be available. Maybe it's on the website neverstate.com. So if it is, I'm going to check it out and make reviews because I do think that he knows what he's talking about and I really want to review his programs. But I was unable to find it today. So today I'm actually reviewing a beginner's program that a lot of people have requested, Ivysaur. The Ivysaur beginner program. Apparently there is also an intermediate one. We're talking about the beginner one today. I have never heard about that program ever. First time. So it's going to be interesting. So let's start. So it's a beginner program. It's focused on powerlifting and strength. I usually don't review powerlifting programs because it's not my my area. I'm a bodybuilder. I don't care about strength. That being said, beginner programs are an exception because beginners run it. Beginners make up 95% of the lifting community, and a lot of the people who run those powerlifting programs don't care about powerlifting. They care about aesthetics. So let's talk about this program from a bodybuilding perspective. Is it going to make you big? Is it going to make you look good? First off, this program was actually created as a response to strong lift and starting strength, which is good because those programs aren't super great for beginners. So apparently there is more horizontal press and frequency, there is more deadlift volume and frequency, there are AMRAPs to determine rate of progression, and you only squat 1 to 2 times per week instead of 3. And there is bicep work with chin-ups. Some of the things I said, you should be worried because they are bad, and some of the things I said, they are good. I'm not going to tell you which is which, because I'm going to get into it for the video. I would say, however, that the rest makes me raise an eyebrow. The program takes advantage of the novice lifter's ability to recover quickly between workouts. Novices don't recover faster than people who are more advanced. It's actually quite the opposite. It's just that because they're not going to lift as much weight and they're not going to have the work capacity to get back to baseline within the session, they're not going to be able to exert themselves as much. But to attack the problem within the angle of saying the consequence is them having more recovery is a wrong way to approach it and can be actually very dangerous because frequency for novices is important, not for muscular hypertrophy, but for injury prevention. And they also say that for a lot of people, you can do that program after you've done strong lift or starting strength, so I will keep that in mind. And then they say if you're a novice lifter, focus on eating, sleeping, and lifting, and you'll figure out programming out along the way. I fully agree. That being said, it's not an excuse for putting those people on poorly written programs, especially if they're tailored towards turning them into powerlifters when maybe they don't want to. So, let's get to it. This is a 3 days a week program. Novice programs tend to be 3 days a week. I've explained that in the past. It's great. It's a good amount of frequency. Now, the amount of time that you have them spend time in the gym is also important. It's called frequency, but frequency also matters within the time frame of the session. Too many people don't understand that. So I have a nice little spreadsheet which makes those reviews possible, by the way. If I had to watch a video to make a review of a program I couldn't, it would take 5 hours. So, week A and week B, that in this case are written up as following each other. So you do week A and then week B. It's not, so first off, and I hope I'm not wrong on that, but it's not like the review of starting strength that I made where you went through phases but you never really went back to phase 1 or phase A. Once you graduated, you kept moving. So in this case, I do think that you alternate. So, day 1 of week A, you do bench 4x4, then squat 4x8, then overhead press 4x8, then chin-ups 4x8. Okay, first off, a good thing I see is you don't squat and deadlift on the same day. That's good. Squatting and deadlifting on the same day, especially for novices, is bad. And it's bad for everyone across the board if you're going to go full exertion style. You can do a hip hinge and a knee flexion on the same day. That's actually something that I advise people do. But it needs to be controlled. The intensity needs to be controlled. If you go ham on the knee flexion, the hip hinge needs to be lower. It needs to be a higher rep range. It needs to be something that is not going to be as taxing, because we want to promote progression but stay safe. So a 4x4 on the bench, I like 4x4. It's sort of an hybrid of 3x5 and 5x5, because if you count the actual tonnage of a 4x4, a 5x5 is a tonnage of 25, a 3x5 is a tonnage of 15, and as far as a 4x4 goes, you are getting a tonnage of 16. So it's very similar to a 3x5. The only difference is that you get that extra rep, that extra set. I actually like 3x5 better than 4x4, because 4x4 is sort of, it's a weird compromise. I don't really see the point. And also, same logic as with any static rep range. If you get 4 on the first set, 4 on the last, you send back the first set and you maybe pushed too much on the last. So, but because it's a novice program, static rep ranges are fine, because progression is going to happen regardless. And the only point of evolving rep ranges is progression. So, squat after that, 4x8. A 4x8 on the squat is decent. You need to be careful with that with novices, because mechanical failure happens very quickly, and a lot of the time, novices will grind ugly reps. Their form will break down because they'll have a weak link, but they'll still be able to get the weight up, and it's going to ingrain poor movement patterns. I am not saying that novices shouldn't do high reps. They absolutely should, but they should do them within a range that is going to keep their form clean. And a lot of them don't have the power and the ability to know that their form is deteriorating as they go. And you could also argue that because their muscular endurance also dies out, novices don't really have the ability to grind. They just fail. The muscle fails. And when you have already a body that is in a compromised position because of structural weakness and mechanical failure, and your muscles fail you, now it can be dangerous. After that, overhead presses, 4x8, great rep range for overhead press. The overhead press, as you progress, you come to realize you need more intensity, so you need to lower the rep range. But this represents a 4x8, and a 4x8 is going to be a total tonnage of 32, which is going to be double the tonnage that you get on the bench. So you get twice as much vertical press volume as horizontal press. I think this is very good for the health of the shoulder, for posture, for everything involved. It's going to be a great way to teach novices how to synergistically program to prevent injuries in the long run and balance their muscles out. The only issue here would be that the horizontal press volume on that day is not as high. But the good thing with horizontal press is it can be made up with frequency. So let's see if they do that. After that, chin-ups. Great. A vertical pull in a beginner's program. Amazing. I just realized also yesterday, I was listening to a podcast, and I realized a big thing about vertical pulls in novice programs too is shoulder decompression. It's key, especially when you have them bench all the time. You need them to be able to decompress those shoulders and that spine too. So chin-ups are very good. Now, 4x8. I don't know many novices who can do 4x8 on the chin-ups. Unless you really have no legs and a strong upper back, it's not going to be doable. Which is why I always tell people, especially if you do body weight, just do as many reps as possible. The vertical pull is the number one movement pattern on which baseline recovery is the highest, you should be able to get back to baseline like this. For example, if you get 10 pull-ups, you should be able to get 10 again. If you can only get 8, there's a problem. And chin-ups, it depends on people, but most people are stronger when they start on chin-ups. So, 4x8 on chin-ups, not really a doable rep range. I would say just do as many as you can and do 4 sets. But that's great. So on that day, I still see the issue of the full body bias, but full body is not bad for novices. That way they get all of that muscle synthesis going and they get a lot of practice on the lift. Day 2, bench again, but this time a 4x8. So we're seeing a nice switch of pace from a 4x4 that is more intensity, 4x8 more volume. I like that. Again, 4x8, I don't like static rep ranges, but it is what it is. Some lifts, I will always advise to do more of an intensity type, like deadlifts. Some I will say always do more of a volume type, like good mornings. The bench is sort of in the middle, where they both work, they both have their issues. For intensity on bench, if your form is poor, you might get injured. That's a given. The high reps on bench is form deterioration, meaning that when you get injured on a bench with a high weight, usually your form doesn't really change. It's that a tiny mistake of flaring out the elbow can trigger it. So there's no failure. You just snap yourself up. On high rep bench, you see the form get worse and worse and worse because novices don't know how to keep themselves tight. So if you film a novice from the side on their bench, you'll see that, let's say they have an arc, if they can arc. Their arc is going to die with each rep and eventually they'll be flat. Same for the shoulders. The shoulders will stay tucked, but with each rep, they'll lose tightness and they'll end up benching like this. This is why we need to be careful with high reps. For bench, it's just like with squats. Mechanical failure is your enemy. After that, deadlift, 4x4. 4x4 on the deadlift, it's the same for the bench on day 1, but on the opposite. On day 1 for the bench, it was too much of the intensity. Now it's too much on the volume side. I'm not a fan of that. Also because it's not going to teach novices how to push. And a deadlift is a lift you should push. I'm not saying do 1 rep maxes. You should get down to 2, for example, with a rep in the tank. But that rep makes a difference. It also represents a lot of pull from the floor volume, especially if it's at a high intensity. 4x4 is a lot. After that, overhead press again, this time 4x4. So as I said, nice switch of pace. 4x4 is a lot of intensity. It promotes progression for the overhead press. Issue is, deadlift for novices who don't know how to pull might be taxing on the lower back. Overhead press can be very taxing on the lower back. People don't realize that. If you don't know how to press overhead, which many novices don't know, you need a strong base. You need your legs and your glutes to be strong, and you need a strong core. If you don't have that, you're starting to, push the collarbones like in front of you. You're starting to round like this, and it puts stress on the lower back. And when you just did deadlift, so you might be in a state of fatigue. So careful. And then barbell rows. I'm not a fan because you already are tired from the deadlift and the overhead press. Now you're going to do barbell rows, which you need a lot of robust flexibility in the arm strength to be able to do that lift. 4x8, at least it's in the volume side of things. So at least the rep range is okay, but I would never have them do horizontal rows on that day. Or I would have them do something on cable, for example, so that you actually work the upper back. You don't throw another tonnage bomb at the posterior chain. And then day 3, bench 3x4 plus 1 set of as many reps as possible. Squat 3x4 plus 1 set of as many reps as possible. So, when I saw the AMRAPs, I was like, because AMRAPs are almost never used for their intended purpose, which is an AMRAP, in my opinion, finishes the job when you're in a fatigued state. For bodybuilding and for hypertrophy, peaking warming up to a top set that you then AMRAP is a waste of time. Because unless you're doing the AMRAP within, I don't know, 4 to 8 reps, then it's great. But in a sense, by saying AMRAP, you're basically saying, I don't know how many reps I'm getting. So you're saying, I didn't program this stuff, it's whatever. Most of the time, it's going to fall into an irrelevant intensity window. If you start doing AMRAPs, you get like 14 reps, and that's supposed to be your top set and your highest quality volume set for the day. Yikes. But here you do a 3x4, so you basically take one set and you do one set of 4 reps with your max weight for that day, and you do an AMRAP. That's much better because you're in a pre-fatigued state, so most likely you will never be able to get more reps. And it's going to either be less reps than what you just got or slightly more. Issue is it promotes injury because 4 sets of 4 reps, 4 reps, it's still intense. It's still that type of rep range where you can do that extra rep that you shouldn't have done. So I'm just checking here to make sure that I'm not saying random nonsense, but I do think that this AMRAP is with the same weight. And basically it's a way for them to be able to accurately pinpoint if you were sandbagging, but at the same time I'm asking, why didn't you try and program in a way that doesn't like make them sandbag? You basically train them to sandbag, and then you're like knock yourself out, kid, and the guy gets 10 reps and you're like, you could have programmed so that he would use more weight or a higher rep range to start with, and he wouldn't have wasted so much time doing low tonnage. But once you get that AMRAP in, at least you know where you're standing, and it's not like you're going to skyrocket in progression afterwards. So you get that going. Same for the squat, same logic here. And then overhead press, so a ton of vertical presses. That's an issue. See, it's the classic too little is bad, too much is also bad. And it's all over the place in YouTube Fitness, in programming. You will have a concept that has a flaw, right? You will have people who say, oh, that flow is nothing, or they'll just ignore the flow. You will have a group of people who will notice the flow, and they will campaign so that other people notice the flow, and so that the flow gets fixed. The cult that created the program or the notion in the first place will refuse, so that group will make their own cult, and they'll replace the flow. But because they've been so aggravated by the fact that that flow wasn't fixed and that they faced resistance, they're going to overdo it. So they're going to shoot it all the way. So we went from novice programs that don't have enough vertical presses to now a novice program that has too much. Overhead press 3 times a week is too much. For many reasons, but it's just not necessary. So I'm not going to say what I would be doing now. I'm going to tell you afterwards what I would replace it with, but you don't need that. You don't need that third day. And then chin-ups, you can never do enough vertical pulls, so different topic here, 4x4. And then in that case, I'm asking myself, if you change the rep range on chin-ups from 4x8 to 4x4, this must mean that these are weighted chin-ups, because if not, if there is no correlation, if there is no modification of difficulty, how come you just decided that your trainee lost 4 reps? So if it's body weight, that's a glaring issue in the program. If it's not body weight, it's still a glaring issue, because why are you programming weighted pull-ups for novices? Let them master body weight stuff before you slap weight on their waist. So yeah, but AMRAP is better for chin-ups anyways. And after that, week B. So week B, I'm not going to have much to say about that, because It's the same type of template that repeats itself but with a different emphasis. So basically week B, day 1, is basically day 2 of week A. It's bench, deadlift, overhead press, barbell rows. And from what I see here, the only issue I see is barbell row, 4x4, terrible. Horizontal pulls, always do them in high reps. And novices, don't make them do high intensity horizontal pulls. They're just going to cheat. Day 2, bench, squat, overhead press, chin up is basically day 1 of week A. And it's the exact same reps, so same logic. And day 3 is basically day 3 of week A, but with a deadlift instead of a squat. AMRAP on deadlift, I wouldn't advise that ever. Always have a fixed amount of reps, because it's too easy to grind ugly reps on the deadlift because you're so strong on pulls from the floor. It's a recipe for disaster. And on top of that, they make you do deadlift with an AMRAP at the end, overhead press with an AMRAP at the end, and barbell rows. That's a big issue I see with novice programs. I spoke about that with Ice Cream Fitness. The propensity novice programs have of slapping a ton of compound movements in one day and just going full berserker with them, like high intensity. And I'm like, why? Why are you trying to get that person so strong so fast? They don't have a train to take. You can take your time, focus on one compound a day with a variation, with low reps, with high reps, with isolation. You don't need to do that. That's way too much. So that's my issue. Now I'm going to read what's underneath it that I've sort of ignored. So they want you to add 15 pounds to your a week to your squat and deadlift, 10 pounds a week to your bench and rows, 5 pounds a week to your overhead press. First off, again, that's that high-speed mentality of novice programs trying to get you to their intermediate numbers as fast as possible. There is no point. It's not a race. Take your time. After that, they discuss the fact that if you get 8 reps on an AMRAP, you double the progression for the rate on that exercise, which would be a sign of poor programming. But in a sense, they fix a flow that they perceived in the program, but they use it's the equivalent of noticing that there is a hole in your wheel, but instead of changing the wheel, you just put a patch on it. That's the patch. Like, oh, I messed up the programming and the AMRAP showed that you were much stronger than what I actually made you do. Just double the rate. I mean, to me, it's not a great way to approach programming. After that, they talk about extra credit. So they tell you that you can transform the 4x4 into a 4x5 if you want, which, again, in static rep ranges is just making it worse. Chin-ups every workout, that's great. And then you can add 2 squat sets to deadlift days, which is awful. Because it means what? Extra credit means you have more work capacity to spend, so spend it on these extra credit, or you have strength to spare, so spend it on this. Here's why it's an issue. In this entire program, there is no long head of the tricep work, no forearm isolation, no trap isolation, no neck isolation, no calf isolation, no abs isolation. Biceps, chin-ups are not a bicep builder. They are an upper back builder, and they have some tonnage directed to biceps. Between doing this and doing this, do you see the difference? When you do this, what is the amount of flexion you get in the bicep? Right? I know the studies that show that chin-ups recruit more bicep. Sorry, I've never seen someone with big biceps that just did chin-ups. Someone who is natural. So that's my bias. Maybe I'm wrong, but if someone comes to me and says, hey, I want big biceps, I'll tell them do curls. And on your arm day, you can do chin-ups if you want to. It will recruit some bicep. It will keep them healthy because of the stretch, but it will mainly build the upper back. It would be like telling someone, hey, you want big front delts? Do curls because it recruits the front delt. It doesn't work like that. But yeah, again, same issue with most novice programs. It ignores a ton of muscles, and because it ignores those muscles, it also ignores the movement patterns that come with the muscle. So you're going to end up with a physique that is unbalanced. The upper back, the real delts, at least the real delts would get some work with the overhead press, but there's no lateral raises and stuff like this. And when I think about a good novice program, it should be an introduction to every single movement pattern to get a base that might be wide. All right, I'm not saying I'm going to make people progress fast, because to me it doesn't matter. Novice programs do this. They have this base, they solidify it, and then they're like, build as fast as possible, build, build. What happens? You're here, you stall, you quit. My goal is, this is the base, right? We're going to build like this. Oh, it's going to be slow. It's going to be real slow. Well, guess what? We're going higher, right? Because we don't have the same goals. The goal is not to be the best at 3 lifts. The goal is to have a great body. So this is not a good program for that. And I'm going to finish with the introduction that I said I would get back to, because I told you, you should get a little bell ringing in your brain as you hear that. So, they say there's more bench press volume and frequency. It's true. It's better than most novice programs. And with the way it's paired with vertical presses, it's actually pretty great. More deadlift volume and frequency. That's actually a bad point, because you don't need that as a novice. AMRAP sets to determine rate of progression instead of only using linear progression. Linear progression is all you need. You don't need the AMRAPs. The AMRAPs are as I said, a contraption to make up for what was a rep range that was not relevant. Squatting 1 to 2 times per week instead of 3 times per week. That's great. You don't need to squat 3 times per week. And then more direct bicep work via chin-ups. I mean, from doing nothing to doing chin-ups, of course you're going to get better bicep gains from doing chin-ups. That being said, just because this program is slightly better in its ability to produce a well-rounded body compared to starting strength, for example, doesn't make it great. If you want something that I consider to be a good beginner's program, go in the program review playlist. I made one. I know I'm a nobody, but I personally think that I have a better grasp on what most people would want to achieve when it comes to aesthetic in their program. Of course, if you are a wannabe powerlifter, then this program would actually be pretty good. Although I would argue that the amount of barbell rows is not really necessary. So yeah, and I'm going to actually finish by saying that I would replace, because I said the overhead press was too much, it was overkill. I would actually, if you told me, please keep the template and make it usable, all right, I would slap the overhead press on day 2, actually, and I would make the overhead press on day 3 4x4, and I would replace the overhead press by skull crushers and curls. And all of the barbell rows, all of them, I would replace one of them by cable rows, and the others I would replace by face pulls and lateral elevations, all right? And just for good measures, because you save time with these, I would superset all of that with shrugs and ab isolation. That way you would actually get a better rounded physique. It wouldn't be complete, but if I had to follow the template, that's what I would do. So that's it. So many people requested the review of that program, so I did it. As usual, keep in mind that if you have the templates for Brian Alsruhe programs, please send them to me. Spreadsheets make this so much easier. And also, there is an aesthetic program. Yes, there is an Ivysaur intermediate aesthetic workout program that I want to review as well, and that will be uploaded on the channel. So thank you for watching again. I hope you have a great day. See you soon.